Hello, welcome to a QA-Automan live stream. Trying out something new a little bit. See how this goes. If you guys have any questions or anything, we have a live chat here, so you can ask questions or whatever it may be. And just kind of get into it, like what we're doing here. I'm gonna show how to automate a website. We're going to start from the basics, starting from the beginning. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask. And we're going to be writing this in Kotlin, using Selenium, TestNG, all the popular flavors of the QA automation world. And so I'm just going to get into it. So one of the things, we want to start with is the idea that we want, we're going to use probably a website like Tools and Taverns or something along those lines, something simple. Toolsandtaverns.com. So this one's I'm only using this one because it's easy to use, something that it's really basic stuff, and it's enough different and variants that we can use to kind of write our automation, with Dropdowns and things of that nature. So before we get into it, we got to create our first, web page, or tests. Sorry. So let's go to tests. So we started creating one. We have Tools and Taverns. We're gonna right click, go new. Hopefully everyone can see. Kotlin file. This one will be. So we're gonna focus on here. This weather generator here. It has some drop downs, things of that nature, and then you click generate, and should generate some data here. Oh, there we go. So tropical spring 98, light rain, all that stuff. So if I click generate, it kind of changes. So when this is going to be useful, especially since like attributes is there sometimes and other times it's not. And we're also going to use this as well as an kind of a test case here. So Tools and Taverns, in our directory new Kotlin file. What do we want to write? This one will be the weather generator tests. So in Kotlin, when you create new files, essentially it's just an empty file. This file doesn't really have any kind of it's just a way to house data and things, other classes, objects, whatever it may be. So what we want to do is we want to create our class, or our test class. So we would set class, and then this one would be weather generator tests. Now, if you're using IntelliJ, it's really, really smart, and it really figures out exactly what, it kind of infers or kind of predicts what you think you want. And 9 times out of 10, it's usually correct. So we'll put in class, and then we're going to put in here, we need to create a class here. So let's fun is for function, and this test will be, so what are we going to focus on? We want to click these drop downs, we're going to hit generate, and it will create it'll create this data here. So we'll kind of start capturing those things. So this one will just be, test generating weather data. So we got the weather data. We got to annotate with test. So let's do that. And all right, so we got that. And so what is this test going to do? And it's always good to kind of use comments to kind of plan out what you're doing. I think it's kind of helpful for that kind of thing to happen. So let's see. We want to go to the weather generator page. Want to go to the generator page. What else do we want to do? We want to select weather options. Submit. Submit options, and then verify it displayed options correctly. There we go. So these are the things that we want to do. Down the thing. So let's see. Let's go back. Okay, so these are the things we need to do, but we need to make a page object. I think you guys are familiar with the page objects. So what we're going to do here is, this is in QA-Automan here. And what we want is, if you're going to name stuff correctly, you want to name a new package, and we're going to call this com.tools and taverns, since that's the website we're automating. So you just want to make sure you do that. And then in here, we're going to create a new Kotlin class, or let's do class for now, and then we'll think about what we're going to do. But this one is the weather generator page. This is our page. So we have our page. When you have our tests here, and what we want to do is we want to be able to go to this page. We want to be able to manipulate some elements on this page here. So we have our drop downs and things of that nature. So we're going to do we're going to start creating these things. So we need a drop down. So the first thing you're going to do is we're going to create a val. What is this called? What kind of drop downs are these? Tropical, moderate, climate. I think it's climate. Climate drop down. And this is going to be a web element. And so when you start working in Kotlin, and one of the things, you always have to initialize your variables. You can never have something like this, like in Java, where you can just kind of leave it there and leave it null. It doesn't like that. So either you need to set it as null, like this, so that later when you do manipulate it, or whatever you do call it, you can check to see if it's null first before interacting with it. So you never make the assumption that it's set. So we're gonna kind of go a little bit into that in a little bit, but we're gonna be using the what is called an annotation called @findBy, and in here, this will allow you can set up your page objects in a way that will make it so when you call your web element right here, it will call and look for it in the DOM every time you call it. So instead of finding it first and then you do something, and if the DOM ever changes, you would have to relook for it every single time. This will allow you to find this web element every single time. So, and then in findBy, you have to specify, how do you find something? Is it in CSS? Is it, actually we can go look at it. Let's go look at it. You can set how do you find it? You can find it through CSS. You can find it through XPath. You can find it through a name, an ID, all this kind of stuff. We're going to stick with CSS just to keep it consistent. Because if you do CSS across the board, you'll never ever you'll have a standardization across the board, and other people that look at your code know exactly what they're doing, what you're doing. So right click, go to the drop down, and in the drop down, we're trying to find what this is specifically. So this is saying that the class is race dash select form select ID NPC options. What happens when we do this? We're going to test it. It's finding 2. Ooh. We want it to find 1. Let's see. Let's see. Placeholder. It has a thing called placeholder climate. Let's see. Class dash rate. Let's see. The class here has race dash select. That one's interesting. Race dash select. It's selecting 2 as well. I think this climate placeholder thing is the only one I can really see. So we'll do select, and we're looking for placeholder equals climate. There we go. That's what we want. See the one of one? That's what we want. So let's copy this. This will be our CSS. And we have our climate. Let's do our second one. Come down here. Val. And what is this other one? This one is a seasons. So seasons drop down. And we're going to make this a web element. We'll say equals null. And at find by CSS equals, and we'll do probably something similar to that, since it's season, yeah, except for it's season. So I'm gonna copy this value here instead and put season. Is it seasons or season? Season. Adding my own s's. There we go. And spelling. Make sure. There we go. Now, one thing I do want to say, if you are going to use this at find by, and then they have this value, what you want to do is you want to do var. And what var will allow you to do is it won't make this final, so that you can keep changing what this object is. And the reason why is because every time you call this, you want to make sure that it has the ability to change what the object is. Because remember, it has to find it every single time you call it. So if that's the case, then you need to make sure that it has the ability to change. If it was a val, then you probably start running into problems. So we have our 2, and let's see. We need a submit button. So let's get our submit button here. What does this look like? Class. There we go. We'll do this button generate. Pretty simple. Let's zoom in. Let's zoom in some text here. Var, and this is the submit button. Web element equals null. Oof, no, not null erase. That is not what we want. CSS. Okay. So, 3. And last but not least, our data. So in here, it looks like we have a bunch of data, and we need to, this is, interesting. This one's going to be a tough one. But up for the challenge. You know what? I'm curious. What happens? All right, we're gonna do some testing in here a little bit, but I'm gonna save this one. I'm gonna save. Oh, by the way, what I just did, so you know, if you select if you select only lines and you Control D will duplicate those lines for you. So something it's kind of nice. Again, the only reason duplicating is because I don't want to type all that out. I know what I do need to change. Again, though, you have to make sure to change all your data. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time. So this will just be the weather info. We'll just call it weather info. And paste our CSS selector. Okay. We'll mess with this in a second, but I kind of want to see what happens if I print out all the text. What does that look like? We're going to be testing our tests. One thing, though, for this all to work, if you really want to get this at find by to work, you need to put in, you need to pass in a driver or things of that nature. And then when you initialize these pages, you need to be able to have the driver kind of set and is what's called a page factory. So we'll do that right now. So first off, we need to pass in a driver. WebDriver. So this is in Kotlin for constructors. You can just put it up in the class as I did here. Makes it really clean. You don't have to go down here and put, none of this stuff, right? Public, weather generator, page. Remember, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Java, but remember this, and You have a yeah, we don't need to do any of that. I just put it right here, makes it really clean. However, what we want to do is we want something to happen on initialization. And in Kotlin, you have what is called the init. And when this happens, every time this class is initialized, this is the chunk of code that will run. So what do we want to do here? Well, on initialization, we want to use what is called the page factory. And this is something in Selenium that allows you to initialize all your elements that you've set inside your page, any of these annotated find bys and things of that nature. So, so we're going to initialize elements. So what is it asking for us? Well, we need a driver for sure. The second is, looks like we need what is called the page class to proxy. So it's like, what is the thing that you want me to make a copy of and have information for and store? So we have our driver because we're passing that in. Second one is this page. This is the page that we want to proxy. So you just pass this, right? This is the thing that we want. So it's kind of nice when you have these kind of terms being able to kind of use in like as they are. So this. So what have we done? We created a weather generator page. We have our dropdown for climate and season, our submit button. This weather info, we're still going to figure out what's going on here. We don't know yet. And then on initialization, it will create our page. So let's come over here and test our data. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create our page. So our page equals weather generator page, and we need to pass a driver in. However, we're running into a problem. We need a driver. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some code from another test here, and we're just going to reuse this for the sake of speed. But again, we're going to create our driver, which is a web driver, and it's null at the moment. But again, we're going to be changing it, so I create it as var, and the the test here is we have this before test and after test. So we're going to copy this code over. And again, you're probably thinking, well, wait, I thought if you said if you're copy pasting, you're doing something wrong. And that is 100% correct. We're definitely doing something wrong. And there's a way to make this a much cleaner way. And we're going to do that in a little bit. But for now, we're just gonna just use this just to make it faster. The last one is we need to create our new page. So private var, what's our page? It's the weather generator page. What is it? It's type weather generator page and equals 1. Okay. So we have that, and we need to create it on the fly. So what we're doing here, and what I just copied, just for those who are new to it, we have our before test and after test annotated on these functions. And what this means is before your entire test runs, not just each test, just what they have. There's the notion that there's I'm just trying to show you here, the notion that in TestNG you have it separated by test, then there is class, and then there is method. And then there's on the very top there's what is called the suite. And in TestNG they broke it up into kind of these different like hierarchies. And again, it looks like this, like they are within each other. So there's a suite. Inside a suite you can have multiple tests. Inside multiple tests you have multiple classes, and in multiple classes you have multiple methods. But test methods. Test, like your test methods, and so what does that look like? Here's a test method inside the class, which is weather generator tests. I guess I could do something like make it look like this. Our class is this one. Now we haven't actually covered anything that actually explains what the test and suite is. And that's kind of when you start running into TestNG XMLs, and that will be way more clear when we start running into those. But for now, just that's kind of what's happening. So what we're saying is we want these functions to run at this level, run them once, and then it runs all the class stuff and then all the method stuff. So before any of this stuff runs, we want to create our driver for the test to use. So we go to the before test, and this is where we are setting up our our Chrome driver. So this is going to be your Chrome driver, the thing that's going to run and do running all our tests. And then after that, we want to shut down driver, close it, get rid of it. We don't want it. We want to clean up. So where are we at? We set up our Chrome driver. We initialize our driver, pops open the page. We create our objects. We need all of our pages that we're going to be using for this test, and we're going to be off to the races. Let me delete this. So we need our actually we're creating our page up here, so we don't even need to do that. Our page is being created. We can just use this. So we need to go to that page. How do we get there? Well, driver dot get. So get will allow us to go to a page. Here, I'm going to copy this URL and paste it as a string. We'll do some refactoring, some cleanup after this. I think it'll be kind of good to do. We want to make sure our driver is not null. That's why I was complaining. You need to always do these checks if you do something like this, where it's saying the WebDriver is equal to null. Kotlin is really strict about checking your nulls. Excuse me. So we're going to go to that page. We hit the weather generator page. We need to select some options. So how do we do that? Well, we can just start writing. You can start using this select object where we start passing things in, or we can create them. So let's go to our weather generator page over here, and we're going to create a function here that will allow us to just pass in a value and be able to select something. So if it's a climate dropdown, we want to select climate from dropdown. And we're probably going to be passing in some kind of string or some information here. So we're going to be probably just climate. I mean, just say what it is, right? So we have our climate, and what we want to do is go back here. What is this? So when you're using these selects or the drop downs, you always want to kind of check to see what's being used. And here we have value. And so you have, for drop downs, you can use it by value, just by text, or by index. Value is probably the better one to use. So probably say it's selected by value or something along those lines. Let's see. What we want to do is val dropdown equals select, and select. Oh, oops. Which one do we want? Selenium. And it's complaining. What does it need? It needs a web element. Which one's our drop-down web element? This climate. Now, something you may know from probably a past video or something that what I've done here before is I had a driver.find element, and then we passed the element through select, and then we did something with it. Whereas this one is like a single line that is creating our drop-down. And so this is really cool because now, again, when you call climate dropdown, every time you call it, it's going through the DOM and searching for it so that you can do something with it, whatever it may be. In our case, we're trying to create a select object so we can select something from it. So it's really cool. So like even if I did this and said climate climate, what is this thing? If I did climate dropdown dot text, right, it would research it. If something changed between these two lines, right, it would pick those up. So it's kind of neat, kind of cool. So our dropdown, what do we want to do? We want to select by value. What's that value? The one we pass in through our select climate from dropdown. That's what we want to do. If you really want to, you know what? No, we'll come back to refactoring. We'll do cleanup later. Cleanup after. So we have our drop down. You know what? We're gonna copy this. I know copy paste is bad, but you know it's gonna be similar. And we're going to use our seasons drop down. So select season from drop down. We're passing in a season and our strings here. Now you'll notice these two are the exact same thing, but that's okay. You know, again, there's this notion, this idea that, you know, you can either create these like select from drop downs so that when it comes time to start automating, you can, when you start messing with your page objects, these are all the things that your page objects can do. And in here, you have select climate from dropdown that passes in a string. You can create those, or if you don't want to do that and you want something that's just like, you know what, I'll just do it myself, where you just create the select here, then you weather page dot climate dropdown. Make sure this isn't null. Make sure this isn't null. Dot select value, and then pass in your climate here. You can do this too. This is also acceptable. It's up to you. There's two different ways. There's tons of ways, but this way is cleaner. You don't have to have all of these extra functions. But you know, there's a lot going on, and you kind of have to follow the code a little bit. It's just kind of whatever, user's choice at this point. I like these because it you know, shows what I can do with my page objects. So I'm just going to do it this way for now, where we dot select climate from a drop down. We're passing our client. Now, what climates do we have? Well, we're just going to do something like dry. We'll just do, or polar. We'll do polar. Just for the sake of simplicity, we'll do polar. And what else do we want to do? We want to select a season. Now, what are our seasons? We have spring, summer, autumn, winter. You know what? Let's go polar winter. Make it cold. Make it cold. Brr. Winter. All right, polar winter. All right, so go to the page. Select the stuff and submit. So weather generator page dot submit button. We want to click it. So click, and we want to verify the data. Now we don't know what this data is, and this is where we got to the point where like, okay, what does this print out? I have no idea what this is going to print out. So we're going to find out. And by doing that, we want our weather info dot text. Dot text on a web element will print out any of the text. Let's see if I go to this element here. So actually, if this H2 here, if I printed out this H2 text, it would be the one in between the tags there. However, the reason I'm not sure what's going on with this div is div, and then there's all these p and strong. There's certain things that will print out all of the data. So if there was like a span or a strong here, it would print out, you know, the climate and tropical together. P's, I don't remember if they do or not, so we're just going to print this out and see what happens. We should print though. Print ln. Again, Kotlin just uses println, none of that system out garbage. And what do we want? This is our weather text. And, well, this is not what we want. We want to surround this with brackets. There we go. So in Kotlin, when you create strings, you can actually evaluate stuff, or you can evaluate functions and values or whatever maybe within brackets. So now it will print this info out. It's really cool. Makes it really simple and really easy, and I always recommend doing this. Don't do string.formats, thing of the past. You don't need to worry about that. So I think we're okay. Let's hopefully run it and see if it works. Here we go. I'm gonna run some stuff. Look at it go. Okay. It worked, and look at that. It did print out everything. Weather text, climate, season, temperature. So, okay. So that's really cool. That happened really fast too. I mean, that's the beauty of automation, right? You want things to be done really fast as possible. So this is cool. This is interesting that it has all this weather. However, you know, there might be a opportunity for us to kind of break this out into different headers or different elements to say, like, what's the climate, what's the season, what's the temperature, and all that, because that's what we want to, in the end, kind of test. So, okay, this is cool. This is cool. So, where did this weather text? Oh, I see. It's this, and then there was a line break. You know what I noticed, though, is it didn't have the data next to it. It just says climate, season, temperature, but doesn't have things like tropical. That is very interesting. You know what we're going to do? We're going to do a debug. We're going to debug this, click these, and we're going to debug it and slow it down and see what happens here. It's interesting. So we're going to okay, that was fast. So there's nothing there. We hit next. There's a delay. Ooh, interesting. There's a big delay there. That's why we didn't see anything. And now in the console, there we go. There's all of our data. Ooh, let's make this a line break. /n line break. So now this climate polar right here will drop down to the next line. So what we want to do is there's two ways of doing this. There is you can put a thread.sleep. I don't know, what was that, 5 seconds? I mean, 10 seconds? Ew. We'll just put 10 to be safe, and then we'll figure out what we need to do here. Let's run this one more time. So boots it up. Click. Oh, see, that was super fast. So we don't know. We don't know what it can be. So, you know, it's kind of interesting. So what we were waiting for is any text after, like, the word climate or something. But you can't always do that, because if there's a bug and, you know, you're waiting, well, I guess that'd be probably a good idea. And here we go. We have all of our information here. There's a little space here. Right there. I don't like that, so I removed it. Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second. So what we want to do is we want to wait for this text to come up. How do we do this? Thinking. Maybe. All right. Well, we got to create our WebDriverWait. So, you know, let's create it at the top. Sure. Private var WebDriverWait. So, something I haven't introduced yet, but WebDriverWait says after you create your driver, then we can create our WebDriverWait. And WebDriverWait takes on a driver, so that's pretty straightforward. And then what else does it take on? It takes on a clock object, a long, a duration, all kinds of stuff here. I think, let's go look at its. I want IntelliJ to, there it is. Timeout in seconds. How long you want it to wait for. So when you use your WebDriverWait, whenever you put your expected conditions or whatever you're waiting for, how long do you want to wait for? Websites should be pretty fast. You should never have anything like more than 5 seconds, unless there's a reason. But we're just going to do 5. We'll do 5 seconds. It takes a long, so I usually put an L, just be explicit. So now instead of the sleep, what are we waiting for? We're waiting for until, oh, make sure it's not null. We're waiting until the climate. So if what I've noticed is polar, and again, you should never use the website as like this is how the functionality is. Like this could definitely be a bug. The fact that I say generate and it says polar here and polar here, that could totally be, we don't know what that is. And there's specifications and there's maybe the PM or somebody can tell us what is supposed to happen here. I know that this is supposed to say climate is supposed to match what you click here. So what we're going to do that. So polar here. So expected conditions. What are we waiting for? We're waiting for element presence, text to be present in an element. That's what we want. And what is that element? That element is our info. This guy. Where are you? This right here. Oops. We're waiting for text to be present in our element. So we have our element. What's the text? We're looking for polar. Now, because we did this, we don't need to do a thread.sleep, because if it takes 3 seconds, right? We don't want to wait all 10 seconds, right? And so, or if it's 5 seconds, you don't want to wait 10 seconds. Like you want to always wait the least amount of time possible. And that's why you should never do these. These are a big no. Like we don't want these. So by the way, for me and what I'm using here, I'm using Control-Y to delete lines. Again, it's hotkey stuff. So we want to wait for the data to populate. Now, if this doesn't happen, right? If this polar doesn't happen and the bug is like it doesn't have the text show up, it will fail. It will fail right here, which is really, really cool, because then you're kind of testing at the same time and also using it as a wait. So it's like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So we wait for that thing. Let's run it. So it shouldn't wait for 10 seconds anymore. It should be waiting for however long. So we're going to do like a little bit of a count. Boom. Oh, okay. So, I mean, there we go. It happened very, 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 very fast. So way better than 10 seconds, right? Oh, wait, no. Hold on. Wait for text to be present in element. I didn't like that. That happened so fast. It's too fast. Because the text was not in element. Let's see. What we want to do is take the let's just pause at this line. Okay. See, now it's in there. This is it's all kinds of bad. What if we did this? Let's make it fail. right? We should wait 5 seconds and it should fail. What are you doing? Expecting a text to be present in element. What? That's not right. Hold on. All right, I'm gonna try something. This is troubleshooting, right? This is what it's all about. Assert true. We're asserting that this. What does this do? Let's look what this does. Pass an element in text. What we want it says, get the text. Do these contain? Okay. Huh. Well, then I'll just do it myself. Dot text dot contains 999999999. If like 999 was in there, that'd be hilarious. Checking for text. And I'm putting a bunch of these exclamation points so I know that this is like I'm like debug messaging code or whatever, so I can delete it later. This is ridiculous. Like, what is even happening? I don't understand. Why would it do that? Why would... See, now it fails. Right. Okay. So... Is this not doing what I think it's doing? Let's see, rerun. Okay, try one more time. If this doesn't work, I'm gonna be livid. All right. See, why does it keep thinking that it's doing that? I don't understand. Text to be present in the element. It is 9999 and it's not there. Come on, Selenium. Of course we... Oh my gosh. Is there another one? Let's see. To be present in element. You know what? Let's do this. We're gonna put a page break in here. I think that's better. And we'll put our numbers in here. And run the debug again. So now if we run the debug, hopefully it will stop there, and then we can use IntelliJ to let us know what these values are. What? What? Hold on. Trying some things. I think maybe I put brackets there, not parentheses. Is that the thing? It was the thing. Oh my gosh, guys, that is the issue. Yes. Okay. So there we go. Waited for text 23842 to be present in element, and it wasn't. Okay. Don't use brackets, use parentheses. That was my fault. I put the brackets in, and that was because it wasn't calling this. A little Kotlin Java confusion there. For dot until, use parentheses, because this is the condition. This is what we want to pass in. So now that we know this fails, let's just run it one more time. No debug. Sanity check. Make sure this fails. Here we go. And fail. Perfect. So now let's put polar back. And run this again. And now we should have now this should work. This it. boot it up, go, wait for the now we're actually going to be waiting for the text. See, there we go. So that was much better. So instead of using a thread sleep, we can use a wait here and just wait for that text to be available before we start moving forward. So you don't have to wait the 10 seconds anymore. You can just wait the appropriate amount of time, and that will make a lot of your tests run so much faster. So now, instead of the weather text, what we want to do is we need to actually start asserting that our text is there. So, if we come back to here, we have our climate, season, there's a bunch of this data. And so the thing is if you keep clicking this, it's a bunch of random data. So how do we know what's supposed to show up? So for now, for this, we're just going to check these two. And then in a later time, we'll go through the temperature, wind, precipitation, and all that stuff. So we'll kind of come back. Let's just do the season, climate and season and all that. We'll just verify those for now. And we're gonna do something really simple, right? The idea is that this text should be there in this data here. So we're printing out the data, and we have some asserts here. We're gonna assert true. What are we asserting? That the data here, the data.text contains. And we're gonna do something simple like this for now, and we'll always come back, and we can always make our tests a little more robust. So then that's fine. So we're just we're making sure that it contains polar and that it contains winter, just because we know. I mean, that's low hanging fruit. We know that's what it contains. Like, it would be really easy to do. We're just gonna run this, just make sure it hits. It should be a fairly quick test. Yeah, I mean, low-hanging fruit, like I said. But now, we want to know what's this data supposed to be? What is that? What we need to figure that out. So to do that, something that's happening is you're trying to figure out what is the data doing? How does it get there? And it's through your network calls, right? So the idea here is that every time I click generate, it hits one of these network calls. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to pull one of these network calls out, and we're going to make the no, we shouldn't do that either. We can't do that either because yeah, that won't work either. So so what we're going to for one of these, we'll come back to one of the network calls and how we kind of start manipulating APIs, because again, you're going to have to call generate. And if you call generate and then you make an API call separately, you're going to have two sets of data, and those will definitely not match. So what we'd probably want to do is you can either do something like verify the text just exists there, like it's just populated after the generate. So that's opportunity there. But for now, let's just clean this code up. So one of the things with this code, right, we have a lot of kind of no-nos that you kind of I did in this class, and I did that on purpose so that we can in fact clean this up. So first and foremost, our data here, right? We have our data. It's copied multiple times. We don't want to do that, right? So what TestNG has for us is something called a data provider, and what a data provider does for us is allow us to pass all sets of data that can be used and reused, and have this test run multiple times using the same code. So let's set up our data provider. So our tests are here. Inside this, we'll create a package. We'll just call it data, and this is where we're going to house our data. You kind of want to keep things separate. Test classes should have just tests. Your data should exist somewhere else. So we're going to create a Kotlin file here, and this will be what is this? Weather gen data. Called weather gen data, I guess. And this will be a function, and we want this to, what was this called? Weather gen data, I guess. And this is a data provider. And what is the name of our provider? You can call it the same. same thing. Doesn't matter. Weather gen data. There we go. And what is this going to return? It's going to return like objects, kind of like an array. So we want to return an array of arrays. So you want to do a 2D array. And so in Kotlin, so in Java, you probably are used to something like object, and it has the 2 brackets, and that's your 2D array. In this one, we're going to be doing an array of, and then it will be an array of arrays, which will also, so it's an array of arrays. And this one, it will just be strings, right? Our data that we want to pass in is polar and winter. So those are 2 strings. So we want to do that. So we'll put polar and winter. And this is complaining because, we have to specify type. You always need that type. So you need to specify what the return type is, and we're returning an array of strings. So this is going to pass in 2 strings. And so what we want to do here is, because it's 2 strings, you need to pass in our test that this is going to take on 2 strings. And our strings are the following: climate, which is a string, and then our weather, which is a string. And data provider, what is our data provider called? It's weather gen data. And where is our data provider located? If you put it in another class, if you do decide to put it in another class, you have to specify the object, the class object, or our file. Otherwise, you're gonna have a bad time. I wonder, we're gonna try something. This may not work, but we'll find out. What if we did this? This might be a whole Kotlin Java situation. I want to see what happens if we run this. Okay. Public. Interesting. We're debugging things. We're seeing how the things go. Final void weather test requires named. Okay. Maybe we might have to wrap this in a class. Data provider class. Weather gen data. Yeah, I think we have to put this in a class, guys, which is fine. Weather gen data. That's okay. Put it in a class. That's fine. So if we're going to put this in a class, then what I would do for your data here is I would just rename this file into, what you call it? Tools and, oh my gosh, tools and taverns, test data. We'll just create that. We'll just do that. Then in here, we can create, this is weather generator data. And so now we can, we can divvy it up. For later dates. So if we have a name, we can have another class, and we can have multiple classes in the same file. It will be a lot easier. Here we go. So, and then now that we have the climate and the weather passed in, we are going to replace this with climate, and this with climate, and this with climate, and then we do the same thing with weather, or not season. Whoops. That makes way more sense since all of this is weather. Here we go. It is complaining about something, and that something is that. All right, and this has our, oh, and let's, just to make sure this does work, we're going to put, instead of polar, let's do dry. Let's go opposite, dry and summer. Okay. All right, here we go. So what should happen here, this should run twice. Should run first using the data. Polar. Whoa, you see that? I mean, that was fast. Okay, that was really fast. Let's slow that down. We're going to put these thread.sleeps just so that we can see what the heck's going on, because that was really fast. Let's give it 7 seconds is fine. All right. All right, here we go. All right, polar winter. It's going to refresh the page, come back, do dry summer. Dry summer. There we go. Okay, see? So now we just tested 2 different things using the same exact code base. I mean, now the possibilities are ended. And later, if they start adding more, like, hey, you know, can we start? There's a lot of bugs with tropical and spring or whatever it may be. I mean, all you got to do is just right here. What is this? Tropical, and then this one should be spring. So now we're testing. I mean, you just need to add data in one spot, and now you're making it so that you can test way more things with the same amount of code. So, I mean, that's really, really useful in the past for the future. Let's remove that. So that's the one thing. So we removed our duplicate strings. That was gross. The other thing we want to do is we don't want to print this anymore. This is something we don't need. The second thing we want to do is, well, we notice that we have this being called every single time. Like, I mean, weather generator, where, you know, it'd be nice to always kind of have a place to go. So what we could do, we'll just probably take this page, or this, we'll remove this, we'll go over to the weather generator page, and at the top here, I mean, or at the bottom here, we can create a val, which will be page URL, and we put it here. So this will allow us to have the page URL, and we always will know where to go. You know, oh, whoops, we want, whose page are we trying to go to? This one. Like this. That's one way. And the second way could be a function that says, you know, go to. Right? And go to, and then instead it would be this line, like this. What? Driver. Why do you not like? Huh? Oh. There we go. So another Kotlin thing. In Kotlin, you know, if you put something the way I did before, right, that would be only on a constructor level are you allowed to use those. However, if you want this to be used amongst like other functions within your class, then you have to specify val or var. And because it's not being used outside of this page, and we only want this page to have access to this driver, you want to keep it private. That's just a kind of just makes it so that it's easier. Like, you know, people don't accidentally take weather page and get the driver then, and you'll start having a lot of problems in that area. So we'll do it that way. And so that this will do is you can just call the go to, and then you can have your test is a little more, you can kind of understand what's going on. So you're like, okay, weather page, you go to. So you're going to that weather page. Then you're selecting, like, this is a better way to kind of have your code or your tests kind of be more like legible instead of having to put this go to the weather generator page. Well, you don't need that comment anymore because I mean, you know exactly what's going on. So that's really nice. So that's one thing. Now another thing is you know, we had to like create this before. We copy pasted from the other test, right? I just copy pasted from here, and that's not good, right? We're better than that. So what we can do is we can create just a base test, right? So test base. And this will be our base class that will kind of house all of these kinds of things. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this guy right out of here and paste it in our test. So this will get mad at us until we... what did I do? Oh my gosh, I created a Java class. Oh boy. Okay. It's fine. Make it happen. Convert. Oh my gosh. Do this again. Delete this. Get out of here. All right. Let's try it one more time. New Kotlin. That's important. Test base. There we go. Then that's better. So the Java Kotlin situation. So now we have our class, and the other thing now we can do is we can add a protected class, or our values or variables, like this driver and this WebDriverWait. Clean up all the white space. I hate white space. I always got to make sure it looks good. So now this is private. We want this to be protected, and that's so that allows us to be used across other. If we're going to inherit from this class, we want to have this being able to have access from our weather generator tests. So those are protected. We don't need to do this, right? We don't want to create our objects right off the bat because every test is different. So we just want to generate our main functions here. And now, before in Kotlin, for allow us to use this class or this test space, you have to specify open class test space. So that when we come over to our other class, we have the ability to do the test space. Like so. So this, get rid of all this. Gross. Test base weather generator test. So now if we ran this, it will run all of this code for us. So now same thing, we can take this test base and we can come over to this name generator tests, and we can inherit from test base, and we can get rid of all this other stuff. And then we have ourselves a we have all that code already handled for us. So again, the whole dry principle is what we want. So one problem though, right? One problem now that we've done all this guy's not being created anymore. So you can do two things here. You can either create it within the test, but then if you create multiple tests, I have a question. Is it better to use Kotlin for mobile testing? You know, if it comes to determining like, oh, should I use Java? Should I use Kotlin? I personally just think that Kotlin is a better language than where Java is going. And I think there's a lot of cool features that Kotlin has that makes it easier to go. So it's not really necessarily, I would say, better for mobile testing. I just think it's just a better language to use. For mobile testing, there's other things that I would recommend, like different libraries and things, like maybe if you're going to use Appium or something. That's a really good thing to use. But what language to choose? I personally love Kotlin way more. So that's kind of why I'm doing all these in Kotlin, is because it's kind of a newer language. Android it's become the official language of Android. So we should start trying it out. Again, feel free to use Java still, but Kotlin is where it's at right now. So back to our with the weather generator page here. What we want to do is we want to initialize it. So you can initialize it per every test, but if you have like 9 tests, you have to create it every single time. So what we want to do is we can create a function which is like, init our page objects. And what this will do is we're going to put this and annotate it by before test or before class. So our test base before test will create our drivers and everything. Then our before class, before this gets initialized, we want to create all of our objects. So this will equal this, and we will be passing in our driver. So now we have our weather. So now this will be not null. This will not be null when we start executing this code. And we're going to do the similar thing in our name generator test over here, since I also deleted that. Except for we're going to be using the name generator, but that was a different video. So continuing with our weather generator page here, this should work. Let's just run it. Right click, run, and hope everything just magically works. And if it doesn't, we'll kind of debug those problems here. This should boot up. Yep. There you go. 3 tests. Perfect. Everything's back to normal, and we have a much cleaner, test object. Just for those who are just tuning in, I just kind of show you the history of this page. So before, it looked like this. So we had all of this extra code here, which if there's a way to, I can't hide all this color stuff, but all of this code now, it's just this right here on the right. So I mean, we just cleaned up our code significantly. I think that's really helpful. So that's one thing. We created our data providers. We have our climate dropdown, our season dropdown. We're clicking. I think that's pretty good where we left off. We have that test. Let's create one other test here. And we want to navigate. And so one of the biggest things in web right now, I've probably heard of, is React. And then this is using React. If you're working with other web developers, you're trying to figure out what are they doing, React or not. And one of the things about React is it's all client-side rendering. So what that means is, if I press, let's just go to the home page right now. Home page. Let's just refresh. So we have our home page, and if you notice, every time I click name or NPC generator or any of these buttons here, right, you notice that the navigation's still here, and then just the content inside is changing. And that's because all it's doing is making network calls to populate its data. So like I click name generator, it made a few calls to populate this data. Now you can run into a lot of bugs when you have client-side rendering versus, which is clicking and navigating through the site, versus server-side rendering, where I'm actually making a call to the server to generate everything. And another, let's see, I think maybe Amazon's a good example. Like if I click Amazon Basics, Amazon.com. Yeah, if I click Amazon Basics, you notice how the whole page flickers like that? The whole page is rendering over and over again. It's because everything's server side. So when you start doing a lot of tests, you have to make sure you do kind of 2 different types of tests, where you're server side versus client side. And I'll show you an example of that right now. So here in this test, this is doing a driver.get, and that's calling the server. We want to navigate and then run some tests. So let's do a navigation to weather generator. So we're going to navigate and select items, whatever it may be. Annotate with that test. Got to make sure. So first and foremost, we got to hit the home page, because that's the start of the test. So driver.get, and we're going to https tools and taverns.com. So toolsandtaverns.com, make sure driver is not null. We get there. Now we want to navigate. Now we haven't created a navigation kind of page or component, so we need to do that. Now, one thing you'll notice is we've been doing page objects, right? full entire pages, right? Well, every page has this navigation in this title here. So it's not necessarily a page, more so like a component. So we're going to actually create a component instead. So we're going to create a new, in our pages here, go to Tools and Taverns, we're going to create a component. And we'll just call this the left navigation component. So it's not really a page, and it still will follow the whole page object format, but we're going to kind of break our pages into components instead. But the same kind of foundation exists there. So create a class here. And what we want to do is we want to pass in our WebDriver like we did before. Import. And then we want to add what do we want? We want, well, we have home. We can do each of these. So let's get home. Oh gosh, this is href. Oh, I don't like this. So in this particular case, I would ask a developer to say, hey, could you add a class or could you add an ID for each of these navigations? Because you never want to say look for from href, only because if the href ever changes, I mean, maybe you can, because if href does change, like if the location URL changes, then I guess it's gonna fail anyways. So you might as well. Yeah, we'll just do that. Href is /. So this is our home link, which is a web element, and this is at find by. So it's CSS, and what do we want to do? An href. What kind of object was it? A. So A, and we were looking for href equals, what did it equal? /. And this is yelling at us because we did not initialize it. All right, so we have our home link. What's next? We'll skip these. We don't want to do each one of these. We'll just do the one that we care about, and that's the weather gen. And what is the weather generator? It's just /weather generator. So looks like it's just this guy. I don't want to type it all out every single time. Weather generator. And this is the weather generator link. All right, so we have our two links, and so this will be used for our navigation. Again, we have to do our init to do the page factory.init our elements. So we want to initialize this by passing in our driver. I guess we're not really using, like, the only reason why you ever want to put val here is if there were going to be other functions that we're going to use driver. Otherwise, you can just have it accessible only by your constructor. So again, it's just cleanliness. You always want to make sure you have really clean, sanitized code, or not sanitized, but just clean code, right? You don't want to have all this garbage all floating around when you don't need it. So we're going to make it so that the driver gets passed in. It initializes these elements so that they can be interactable or can be interacted with. So if I go to WeatherGen and up here, I want to add it to the things that we're going to mess with. So var, this is our left navigation component, and left navigation component equals null. We need to initialize it. So we're make this out of this down here. Wow, what did I do there? That's dumb. Okay. Oh, this is lowercase. All right. So left navigation component, left. Okay. Now we get there, and now we go to the home page, and now we want to click to the next. We want to click to the net. We want to click to our weather generator. So dot. What is it? Weather generator link. There it is. Dot click. So we go there. Then we click our weather generator. Now, how do we know we're on our weather generator? How do we know we're there, right? How do we know the page is loaded? Well, if you're on the weather generator page, you want to verify that the, maybe the drop downs are there, right? Or something along those lines. You can do something like that. Again, you don't necessarily need to do that maybe every time. Those are always nice to haves. But here's at the end of the day, when you're writing your tests, I mean, if you're going to go somewhere and then you're going to start interacting with those things, and those things are not readily available to you, already you're going to be testing that, like, the page already loaded. Like, it's kind of inherent, right? So you don't have to, like, always, okay, is this loaded, and all that stuff. So you don't always have to worry about that kind of stuff. And then we're not going to either. So we're just going to click, and then we're going to proceed forward. And our proceeding forward would be kind of running through these tests here. Now, one of the things here is, it's actually kind of cool opportunity is, we have the same kind of logic right here that we're trying to reuse, right? Because the difference here is go to versus load the page and then navigate there. So there's many options that are available to us right now. So what we're going to do for this one is we're going to take this code and we're going to create kind of a separate, let's see, we're going to copy all this. We're going to, on our weather generator page, we're going to create, should we create it here? No. I want to reuse this code. Right, let's do private function. We're just going to put it here for now, and we'll find a new place for it after this. Select weather options and verify data, right? Information. So we're going to do, we want to take this code here, and we want to make it so that we have, these two tests are essentially doing the same thing, just, they're slightly different, right? Like, this is one line. So we're going to do one way, and I'll show you both ways just so you have an idea of, like, what it can be. And again, this one passes in a climate and a string. And there we go. So here we have this, and we'll pass in our strings here. Our climate is, even better. We have our data provider, right? We just reuse our data provider from before. So now all we have to do is pass in our climate string and our season string. And for those who weren't with us prior, I created a data provider here that will pass in different data here. And then if you're using Kotlin, instead of a 2D object, you just say an array of, and then array of. So it just says array type, which is an array of strings. So that's kind of like your 2D array there. I'm passing in different permutations here of data that we want to use that passes into our drop downs so that it generates different data every time. Now, so now we just created two test classes, and actually let's put our climate season, and then we can have one line replace all of this garbage like that. So now we essentially created two test cases, and they're going to run 6. So now, like, just a few lines of code, and we're testing a ton of this feature already, and that's awesome. Now, select weather options and verify information. So now we're reusing this code, and this is down here. Now, the reason I'm not a big fan of this is because now you're going to have this kind of function floating around in the test class, and I don't like that. I like to have functions housed elsewhere outside of test classes, because you should always have only thing that should exist here are test functions, and that's it. So I'll show you a separate way in a second, but let's just see if this runs, right? Let's kick it off. We should be running 6 test cases here. See this kind of go, make it do its thing. Dry, summer, tropical, spring. Oh, okay. So navigate and select items versus test generated, that didn't work out too well. So let's figure out what happened here. An invalid or illegal selector was specified. Ooh, interesting. It didn't like... Oh, haha. I just put in some garbage. You need to say that this is an hreflang. Now let's rerun it. Ooh. So what happens when you work really, really fast? You gotta slow down. All right, you see, so this was the navigation one, and then this one's the... There we go. So we did a navigation, so we navigated there, and then we did a server side. So now we tested server side, and we tested our server side, and we tested our client side. Now I'll show you the second option. So we have this, the idea that we had this function here. Again, I wouldn't really know where to put this. You can create like a whole other like business class thing, and it just gets really messy that way. The other option is we can actually just pass it into our data provider. I mean, why not, right? So if we go to our data, we can pass in how we run our tests. Actually, that wouldn't be a good idea. No. Because then you pass in the function, and then you would have to create, like, it would look like something like this, right? Oh my gosh. Let's close all these things. Weather generator tests. If we go back to our here, what I was going to say is you can put a function in here if we wanted to. That would be like, like a driver.goto or whatever. But that's too much. For now, we'll just leave this here, and we'll figure out another solution in a little bit. So let's see. What else did we want to do? I think this is looking pretty good. One more thing would be, if you notice our base class here, or our pages here, right? We have to always initialize it. And every single time. It'd be super helpful if we just had a base page. So I'm going to create one, and I'm just going to actually call this just component base. The reason I'm not saying page is because now we started messing. We have pages and components, and we're kind of like mixing those up. And just for like keeping it simple, we'll just do a component base. And this requires a driver, WebDriver. And what do we do in this WebDriver? Well, every time we initialize this thing, we want it to run page factory dot init elements driver and this. So you remember the line right here? Now we don't need this anymore, only because we can inherit from component base, and we can pass in our driver, this guy. Oh, why are you complaining? Remember, in Kotlin, we need to open a class if we want to inherit from it. So now when we do this component base, it requires a constructor argument of a driver. We're just going to pass in this guy. So Kotlin will just automatically click, move that one over. Easy. So now, we just cleaned it up even more. All you have to do is, if you want this to initialize, you just have to inherit from this. So same thing here, and delete this init. Boom. See? Easy. And now our code is, we write less code to do more. I mean, that's the end goal there. So it looks pretty good. I think that's good. I think we're gonna end it here and hopefully pick up another one later this week. Hope you guys enjoyed this is the first stream, a first go. Please comment below. the do's, the don'ts, what did you like, what did you hate. Please subscribe if you want to come back. Hit that subscribe button. That'd be really awesome. If you like it, hit that thumbs up, and if you didn't, dislike, but let me know. Let me know what's going on. Let's make these better. I want to hear from you guys. So you guys have good rest of your week, and hopefully tune in next time. Until then, I will see you guys online.